I've played a lot of Fender guitars this year, and some things that irk me about them is that they come out of the factory with 9s on them. I think this, to me, does make them feel a little bit toyish, as someone who's used to playing 10s. But there's one thing about them which, to me, is a little bit of something that I think Fender are kind of missing, which is that across, basically, like, if you've got a Fender Player 2, an American Professional, an Ultra, they're an American Performer, like, the majority of these guitars will have quite a similar neck shape, and it will be like 0.82 here, going up a little bit. But I think this is a little bit of a blind spot of Fender, where as much as they're offering tons and tons of variations of guitars, and maybe even too many, there isn't, like, amongst the mass-produced stuff, that much variation in the neck, to the point where this guitar, of all of the Fenders that I've tried, sort of sticks out to me most, because the neck shape is, even though this is a Vintera, you know, like a Mexican, it's not a top-of-the-range anything, but the neck shape is noticeably more grown-up feeling to me than the American Professional, the American Ultra Luxe Vintage, than the Player 2. And I think this is something like what Fender should be looking into a little bit, maybe. Maybe they're fine, they're probably selling enough guitars, right?
This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library.
Enough, you can get the TrueFire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing, so just jump and do that if you're looking for...
If you go on Fender's website and you click on the guitar type that you're interested in, so whether that's the Strat, Tele, or whatever, it will tell you how many of those types of guitars Fender make. Stratocaster, which particularly is interesting for me because I really like the Strat, there's 156 types of Strat that Fender make. Now, this doesn't include colours. In this video, I'm not talking badly about the guitars that Fender are making. It's just like, as a potential buyer of a guitar, I think that Fender are missing a little bit of the point, and it's getting kind of tricky to know what you're buying, what the names might even mean. So, first of all, we have the Standard. So these are like their ranges of guitars. Standard, made in Japan, Artist Signature, Vintera 2, Player 2, Player 2 Modified, American Performer, American Professional 2, American Professional Classic Series, American Vintage 2, American Ultra 2, American Ultra Luxe Vintage. So that's 12 sort of categories of guitar there, which... within each of them, of course, you've got loads and loads of other... But I feel like the names like American Professional Classic, American Luxe, Ultra Luxe Vintage, it's like starting to mix up these names in a thing which I think is not particularly that clear, like what it is the point of those lines. Do you know what I mean? So in this video, I wanted to kind of talk about where I think there is actually a little bit of an opportunity for Fender to either communicate more clearly what these things are, or what I'd really like to see from Fender as like a fan of Fender style guitars in general, and what I think is important about some of these things. Let me know in the comments whether I'm way off base on this or not. So, to me, here's the thing. I can see, right, like Fender Mexico, Fender Japan, Fender America. That you've got those three things. Those are three clearly... Well, you've also got Fender China and Indonesia as well. But, like, clear designations of where these things are built. And that's probably an important part of why people feel like they could spend, you know, twice as much money on a guitar as maybe because it's made in America. So I understand splitting things apart in that difference. Now, the other few things that I can understand is, so say you've got like your American Professional, for example, is basically quite similar to the Player or Player 2. So these are like the modern-ish take on things. So that's kind of your way to distinguish things. So you've got Player or Professional, so American or Mexican. They're like the modern-ish take on things. So it's not too modern, not too vintage. If you want vintage, you've got Vintera or American Vintage. So these are kind of more specifically reissued guitars, right? So they used to be called like American Vintage Reissue, or I don't know what the Mexican stuff was called. I don't know. Anyway, so you've got, those are like your two things. You've got your Player or your Vintera, your Professional or your American Vintage. Then you've got your modern sort of stuff. So whether that's like your Ultra, and what do they make in Mexico that's like the more, I guess, Player 2 modified, maybe. But, you know, they have less of that. And then you've got like your Japanese stuff, which seems to be doing somewhat similar things. So I can understand that you have like a three-way sort of stratification of that sort of thing, right? It's not the word, is it? Stratification. Anyway, like, so three approaches. Vintage, we build it pretty much like the old stuff. Somewhere in the middle, this is your guitar, which is not super vintage. You know, like these might have more realistic, slightly thinner necks or something like that, or some sort of more modern features, whether that's like adjustments up at the headstock or 2-point trems or whatever. And then your Ultra is like your very modern guitar, you know, stainless steel frets or noiseless pickups or locking tuners, bits and pieces that you'd expect. So I understand that point of stuff. I think once you start to blend between those, though, it becomes even less clear what those initial sort of things were going to be, which I think is what the Ultra Luxe Vintage really is. Like, that's blending between the categories. And also the American Professional Classic, which I just demoed this week, is again starting to blend back between. So the American Professional is a little bit modern, so normally I think that would have locking tuners on it. And instead they've now put on the classic tuners and some other bits and pieces. So blending back. So I think Fender are recognizing that there are guitarists that want lots of different things and building a load of different guitars for different reasons. But what I think they're really missing is one of the most important things to me, which is that the number one factor to me on the guitar is how is that neck shape. Like, you've got this hand holding a pick. Like, this guitar hand doesn't necessarily interface with the guitar a whole lot. A Strat body is a Strat body, a Tele body is a Tele body. Like, those things don't change too much unless you go for like the Ultra, in which case you've got different contours, right? You know, different neck joins or whatever. The neck is the most important part. Now, you can find some of these neck specifications, but they're a little bit buried. And I think Fender should be doing a better job, in my opinion, of first of all highlighting what like these neck shapes actually mean and what the differences might be. For instance, I didn't know that the Fender Ultra and the Fender Player used to have pretty much the same dimensions. Now, there's a difference in terms of shape, but in terms of neck thickness, that they used to be the same. The Ultra Luxe Vintage has a slightly thicker neck than an Ultra, I think. But these things, to me, are like the actual thing about whether you're going to maybe get on with a guitar neck or not. And here's my number one thing that I think Fender are doing a little bit too much of, in my opinion, is using very similar neck shapes over and over and over again across the range. And so this is what I would quite like to see from Fender. So understanding that there's maybe like 3 stratifications, categories that you could have a guitar in: a vintage, a middle of the road, and a ultra modern sort of thing. Within those categories, I'd like to see Fender doing more in terms of neck shape. So I don't know for sure whether this is the case, but I think the thickest neck shape, like in a production Fender, is the American Vintage 57 reissue, which is a medium V shape, but if you check the specs on that, it nearly goes up to about 1 inch. I think that's the thickest, but I can't tell for sure because it's kind of hard to find some of this information. A lot of these necks, like the Player 2, the American Professional, they get a little bit thicker up here, but they start off relatively slim. And I think they're all, even like the American Professional, which is called Deep Sea, is kind of nothing to me more than medium. It's not super skinny, but it's to me, as I've played like a lot of guitars, all of these Fender necks tend to be quite slim, and that's what I'd like to see change, or more clear. You know, like if I'm looking for a Fender with a thicker neck, what should I be looking at? Like the American Vintage 9061 Strat that I played of Anthony's, that was really even skinnier than I expected down at the nut. The American Ultra Luxe Vintage that they sent feels slim the whole way, but also not much different to this Telly that they sent, which is like the classic. I think, and again, let me know in the comments if you feel like I'm totally way off on this, that actually what I would like from Fender, if you're going to build 156 different types of Strat, I'd like it more clear, you know, can I buy a Strat which is vintage style with a slim neck from Mexico, from wherever, or can I buy like this, like the Ultra Luxe Vintage, but with a thicker neck? You know, so like most of these guitar types could come with 1, 2, or 3 different style of neck. You know, accepting that that is a huge part of what makes a guitar feel like it is. They mostly, I think mostly tend to use 9.5 inch radius at the moment. This is obviously compound, which is slightly different. I think it goes like 9 to 14 or something like that. But again, that's one of those things where, okay, I accept that 9.5 probably is a really good sort of middle ground. That's fine, but I do think that the neck shape should be more variable across the range, I think, personally. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see. Like, okay, I think that most of these necks sort of are pretty medium, but if I wanted a sort of American Professional style guitar, so like middle of the road, at the moment I think the neck's sort of medium, skinny. Could there be a guitar in that range? You know, you're building 156 of these types of guitars that had a slightly thicker neck to it. Or, you know, if you wanted like I really like a vintage style guitar, but actually I'd quite like a really fast neck on it. Well, what if they built like one of these reissue type guitars? I guess like this, more or less. And that is the point, that I think they are trying to answer some of these questions. But I looked at the mod shop as well, and that even, like the amount of necks that are on offer there, like a lot of them seem to be fairly similar. So that to me, I mean, maybe that's exactly what the custom shop is for. But I think if you're building 156 different guitars, like Strats, as they are, that you could, I think, first of all, make clear or clearer what neck shapes are actually on those guitars and what they are, instead of, so they're in like a service manual, you can find them, some of them at least, not all of them. But yeah, make it super clear what those are. You honestly have to get a neck in your hand to really know what it feels like anyway. Like, it's so variable in terms of, you know, you might think you like a neck a certain shape, and then you think actually this is way worse or whatever. But yeah, there's a definite, I think, gap where they're not building like that many guitars with these, I think, slightly thicker necks. So more like the Eric Johnson Virginia style, or more like that 57 maple American Vintage reissue, or like this one here, the Vintera 260 Strat. This has quite a nice, to me, I think this is my favourite production neck that I felt that Fender make. It's just really, really comfortable. But this neck shape, for instance, on that Ultra Luxe Vintage, I'd be even more of a fan of that guitar, I think. So that, to me, is like the little bit of where Fender are missing some of what they could be doing, in my opinion. Likewise, there's loads of pickups that you can get across all of the choices, and it's, I think, an area that Fender do pretty well. Like the Fender guitars that I've played tend to sound really good anyway. The neck shape is where I think that there could be some more development, I think. Maybe that's what the custom shop's for, potentially. What do you reckon? Are you happy with the sort of middle of the road Fender necks on most of their guitars? Or do you have to go to like the custom shop stuff to find something you're really comfortable with? Or the American Vintage series? What works for you? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.